And here we are. We are live. Always those few seconds where I'm like, are we live? And we are.
Did it work? Did it
It
really?
did. I mean, I certainly hope it did. So thank you anyone for tuning in if you can see us for another edition of Kobo Writing Life's live Q&A. We're coming to you from a sunny but a little bit chilly Toronto. It's like the most pretty time of the year here. Chris and I were just talking about that. But I would love to hear where you are coming from. So let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from live. And that would be super fun. And I am really thrilled to welcome Carissa Andrews for this month's chat. Carissa is the best-selling urban fantasy author and also CEO of Author Revolution. So welcome, Carissa.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited, Tara.
Thanks. Thanks for coming. It's like, it's just really great to have to chat to you. And you're in Minnesota, so you have similar weather to us.
Absolutely. Yes, it's so beautiful today. We've been really lucky. It's been sunny and the leaves are starting to turn. It's just beautiful.
I know. Soon we'll just be complaining about the snow, the tremendous
cold.
snow.
Yes, it's coming. We have to enjoy the beautiful weather while we can.
Exactly. But so, for anyone that may not be familiar with you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I think maybe let's start with because you wear so many hats. Let's start with your writing career and like, how did you get into writing and indie publishing in general?
Sure. Well, I think I've always been a writer. So like in school, I was always the person that was writing, those angsty poems or the angsty little short stories or whatever in junior high. And my English teacher kind of took me under her wing for a bit and was kind of helping me develop my writing style. And I wrote my first book when I was 14 years old, and it was all based off of a dream, right? It was crazy. It was like this weird dream that felt more like a past life regression memory or something. It was so vivid that when I woke up, I was like, I have to write a story about this. This is really cool. And it ended up becoming transforming, I guess, into Secret Legacy, which actually launched last year because the dream is still there. Like I still can remember everything about that dream.
I have one like that where I was convinced it was a memory until I told my family about it, and they were like, "That never happened, Tara." And I was like, "Oh, like I just dreamed this thing that I for sure thought happened."
Right, and that's how it felt for sure. And it was one of those things where it's like it was so haunting feeling that I knew it would have to be a paranormal type story. So both versions of it were more paranormal, but the first version will never see the light of day. Oh my gosh. I have it in a packet, but it's gonna go to my grave with me. But indie publishing, I guess it kind of came about in 2010 when I was going to school, or I had gone to school for graphic design, and I was really feeling kind of, I don't know, like I didn't really like the corporate world of graphic design. And my best friend was like, well, you've always liked writing. Why aren't you writing? Do a blog or something. And so I started doing a blog and ended up transforming into writing because I got a really cool story idea, which ended up becoming Pendamus. That was my first book ever released. And I didn't know for sure that I'd want to be in the indie space because at that time it was still kind of new. People didn't really know, was this a thing or self-publishing, it had a stigma a little bit. And I don't know, I was not quite sure what I wanted to do with it per se, but I had a background in graphic design. I worked for bookstores, I'd worked for printers, I'd worked for a publisher. So it's like I had this background of the backside of printing and publishing that I was like, I should probably utilize this at some point. And my critique partners and everything loved the indie space. And so I kind of was drug along with them at that point and kind of haven't turned back and looked back.
Oh, nice. So you were sort of in the book world in general, but just working in all the different aspects.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's interesting that you get to kind of choose between to like go the indie route and things like that, because often there's that misconception that it's not a choice,
Sure. Yeah. For me, it was more of a choice. I was deciding, do I want to do query letters? Do I want to go traditional? And it was really this group of people who were like, why would you do that when you have this experience and this knowledge? And the more I was looking at it, the more I was like, you know what, they're probably right. And so I figured, well, I'll just put this first book out and see if I like it, see if I like the process. And if nothing else, then I'll just start querying the next set of books or, whatever the case might be. And that's really what I did. And I haven't turned back since that point.
Nice. And we're glad that you didn't get to chat to you. Well, we have people coming in from all over the world, which I love seeing. And I forgot to mention, if you have questions for Carissa, comments or anything, please drop them into the comment box and we will get to them. But yeah, let's start talking about the indie verse.
Yeah,
So
you bet.
what do you think is the biggest misconception about indie publishing? Do you think it still is that, like, oh, you're doing this because you can't be traditionally published?
I think the biggest misconception truly is that idea that you're not a real author if you self-publish,
Hmm.
because they don't realize the amount of work that actually goes into it, the number of hats that an indie author now wears. It's pretty incredible. I mean, we've actually counted over at Author Revolution. I've done a podcast about it where there's something like 25 hats that an indie author at any given moment is wearing, because they're not only the writer, but they're the marketer, the copywriter, the graphic designer. There's so many different things that they're constantly doing. That they have to know keywords and newsletters. I mean, there's a lot to dig into, and I would actually challenge that indie authors know more about this space, know more about publishing and being a writer than a traditionally published author does.
Do you think being a graphic designer sort of gave you a little bit of an edge in terms of like your book marketing and covers and things like that?
I think sometimes the graphic design stuff I have down. I was just teasing my PA Jenny yesterday. She's been helping me because we're trying to nail down a couple of book blurbs that I'm just not truly happy with, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to like up my copywriting game, because for whatever reason I just suck at this so much. But I think most indie authors can really relate to that, because it's so hard when you're the person who's written everything to nail it down. But when it comes to the graphic design stuff, oh yeah, I've got that to the point where I know what my branding should look like. I know how I want to be out there, and how I want my books to look. So that helps tremendously, and it always has, even in the beginning.
Hmm. Especially you must have a very visual eye then, having that kind of background as well. So I'm sure that helps, especially with the book selling
Yeah.
in addition to. It's like
Oh, for sure.
yeah, all good jobs to just help you become a successful indie.
Right. My mom was a fine art, well, is a fine artist, and so she paints.
Oh,
And so for me, it was like I kind of married up what my dad was like and what my mom was like, because he's a techie. He worked at IBM, and he's done a lot of technology engineering type stuff. Loves computers, and my mom was always the fine artist, the artistic mind, creative mind. And so it's like graphic design just kind of seemed like I was marrying the two up, and off and ran with it, and I just love it.
nice.
It's so much
That
fun. Yeah.
that's one of the things that I say about working at Kobo that I really like, that it's books meets tech. So it's like I can sort of feel like you're being a little on the tech side, but then also sort of working in the arts. And anyone that's publishing digitally, you have to learn something that you didn't know before. So yeah.
Absolutely. I'm even now, 10 years on, there's stuff that I'm learning where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. I mean, my husband was just showing me DaVinci Resolve the other day. He used it to do our book trailer for Secret Legacy. And now I'm kind of tweaking it to do different things. Like I created a meditation for Author Revolution. And so I was adding little sparkles into the background of it. It's like there's always something you can be learning and digging into and messing around with. It's so much fun.
Yeah. So I want to just like chat about like just the industry, I guess, just briefly, and then we can move on. But just to me, things seem to be like it's so cyclical. Indie publishing, it breaks away from traditional and it becomes its own like powerful thing. But then it sort of comes back and the lines blur even further. We're noticing traditional publishers using indie tools and tactics all the time.
Hmm.
So I know that you've sort of chatted before about how indies are sometimes losing their full independence with like this different type of gatekeeper coming into place. Like I think you've mentioned, like the whole notion that you have to do XYZ before you publish. Could you talk about this a little bit, and if this
Sure.
is sort of what inspired you to sort of create the author revolution?
I think for me, Author Revolution kind of stemmed from this idea that, well, first of all, it was a revolution in the first place. So being an indie author revolutionized the way that we create and put our books out. But now that we're 10 years on, I really feel like it's become a question of like, what is it that we want to become now? Because we kind of we were pantsing it. I mean, every one of us who were coming into being an indie author, we didn't know what it was supposed to look like because it didn't exist. And if you were in the traditional space a little bit, maybe you had some ideas of how it should operate and you kind of followed what they were doing. But now that we've kind of created this space, and like you said, it's starting to blur the lines between traditional and indie, I think we as indie authors need to decide what it is that we really want our future careers to be looking like. Because I think all too often we kind of have been led by this notion that we have to, have to make so much money, you have to do this, you have to do that, which then has kind of increased that engine of like, you have to output, 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 output all the time. And it's really kind of, it gets to the point where it's either overwhelming, daunting, or people just break and they say they can't do it because that's just too much to handle. And so I think indie authors really need to take a step back and say, okay, what is it that they want their career to look like? It doesn't have to be a quick buck thing. It doesn't have to be a, reach your 26 books to hit your 60,000 a year mark right away. You don't have to do that in a year. You can take your time. You can make a strategic plan in order to get there faster, yes, but not necessarily in 12 months. You don't have to publish like a crazy person. You have to look at your career and really decide what it is you want your life to look like, because this is a long game. I mean, being an author, I don't know about you guys, but for me, being an author is something I plan on doing until the day I die, more than likely. I mean, I'm going to be Sue Grafton, where I'm like halfway through a novel and someone's going to have to finish it, probably. You know what I mean? And so it's just, it's the way it is. And so I want to be able to make sure that my life fits around the way I am building my career and not the other way around. I don't want to constantly be in this struggle of performing and succeeding when it means everything else kind of gets pushed to the wayside. And so that's where I think we really need to start looking at the way that we're handling our indie author careers and the way that we're handling indie authorhood in general.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it can be so easy to get stuck in a sort of comparison void, or just see that this is the new thing that everyone is doing, so now I have to do it and drop everything else that was planned.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really important, the message that you're sending, to sort of like just reevaluate. We always say at Kobo that it is really like a long-term plan for your career. If you wanted to get rich really quickly, publishing is probably the wrong industry for you. But yeah, it's more about the longevity, about just having a career that you're really happy with,
and enjoying the process and being able to put out your creativity in a way that resonates with you. You know what I mean? Because not everybody is called to write as their creative endeavor. And so if that's calling to you, then enjoy the process. Let your inner knowing of how you want this thing to come out, or how this thing to be the focus, rather than trying to copy what everyone else is doing just because that's the trend. I wrote a post a long time ago where it was like, screw being relevant. I don't want to be relevant. I want to write what's in my heart, what I know I want to write. And yes, as you go on with your career, you start to pick up more about what those trends are, what things are looking like, how to write to market better, but yet still do it in alignment or dovetailing with what it is you're actually trying to say, what it is that is needing to come out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a quote. I'm just going to quote yourself to you.
Okay.
From your blog, from the blog that you wrote for us, which I think is really great, that you really love to teach. What you really love to teach is how to build an intentional author career by developing a prolific author mindset and putting a plan in place to make the magic happen. So I thought that was just really nicely put together.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that mindset is so key. And like I said, we were all pantsing it. I think most indie authors come into it pantsing it. Like, they don't know that they want to have a career necessarily. They just want to write a book and put it out there. Or, someone said, hey, you should write this thing and put it out there. Who knows? There's so many different ways we come into this concept. And having a prolific author mindset is really just knowing that you can go, as long as you're writing another book, as long as you're focusing on the future of where you're trying to go, that's what you're trying to accomplish. You don't have to worry about, did this series sell the way I wanted to? Why isn't it? Tweak it to death until it does or does not perform. It's really about learning how to enjoy this whole process and spotting the trends when books do really well. What was it that worked? What didn't work? And then just keep moving forward with it. I mean, you grow and you learn, and you start taking on board those things that work automatically as you continue forward. And you can't do that unless you keep going forward.
Right, for sure. So if there was somebody that was newly looking to get into the independent publishing business, what would be your advice for somebody starting out, especially with trying to balance learning new platforms and marketing? Like, what would be your piece of advice be? Like, what should somebody focus on?
I think the first thing is going to be craft. It would be really to stop. Don't worry so much about sales or book covers, book blurbs, or any of those things. It's really to focus on the craft of your writing and try to figure out, how do you develop characters that are, complex and draw the reader in, because characters first. I mean, a plot can even suck, but as long as you got really good characters, you're at least headed in the right direction. And then you want to learn how to develop the characters in a way that really works. Make sure you know what tenses you're trying to use when you're writing your books. Read as much as humanly possible in the genre you are writing in, because I can't tell you how many times I've read a book that has just blown my mind and I've gone, oh my gosh, that author is just incredible at what they do. And then it leads on to cool ideas or new ways of thinking on how I could write, or test the way I can write, or whatever. There's so many different things, but that's where I would definitely start.
Yeah, I was going to ask what inspired you, but so I guess what inspires you is just sort of like being inspired by other people's work.
Sort of, yeah. I think it depends. I've always been a kind of a deep thinker, so I've always loved those kind of existential questions, I guess. Where do we come from? What's the soul about? What happens when you die? So you'll see a lot of that sort of stuff in my writing, and it kind of stems from that underlying, I don't know if new age is the right word, but kind of that new age vibe, because I love the idea of us being bigger than we really are, being connected in a deeper way, a more meaningful way, I guess. But yeah, I will absolutely get inspired reading other people's stories or other people's TV shows. It doesn't matter where you're consuming the story. I mean, Joss Whedon back in the day, I know he's a little cringy right now, but back in the day, he was incredible. The way he could tell a story through Buffy or Angel or Firefly or any of the shows. I mean, honestly, he's an incredible storyteller, and so he inspired me from the very beginning. And obviously, it wasn't books. I didn't even read his comic book. I just liked his shows.
It's funny you bring him up, because Buffy's a point of contention in our team, because 2 members are huge fans, and then a lot of us have not seen it, and we argue about it. We argue about it a lot. So.
It is. I love the ironic humor. I think that's where I come from, where it's that moment where something is dark and deep and it looks dire, and then he throws in like some snarky joke, or something that's just completely off the wall, and it's fun. He's a master at what he does, for sure.
I will have to visit at some point, to my chagrin.
Well, even if you don't want to check out Buffy, check out the Nevers. He did an incredible job with the Nevers, and it's a brand new show. I don't know if it's going to continue, but the first season was fantastic.
Okay, cool. So we have a question come in from Carolyn. It's this is Kobo specific, but perhaps you can give some advice as well. It says, with Kobo, how do you advertise, and what platform do you advertise on? I'm familiar with Amazon, but I'm looking at publishing on Kobo next year. So what I would say, Carolyn, is that we have a promotions tool that can sort of help you get your book in front of Kobo readers specifically. So if you email the team at writinglife@kobo.com, we can provide you with more information or make sure that you have access. And then in terms of advertising, I think a lot of the external advertising that you do for like Amazon, etc., could also work for Kobo, whether it's Facebook ads or things like that. Carissa, what do you do in terms of advertising? Or I know that's a huge question. So
yeah. No, it's a couple different things. So I use Draft to Digital for some of my stuff, and so because of that, I mean, I go direct to Kobo so that I have the promotions tab, which is fantastic, and I do use that. But I also use Draft Digital's books to read links, so that I can make sure that if you send them the link, whichever place you're trying to advertise to, it gives them that option and ability. So then I'll do Facebook ads. I do BookBub ads. Sometimes I will do it so it's going directly to my website, but then making sure that all of the links are available on the website. I will do native social media promotions where it's literally just Kobo. So that way it's, hey, if you're a Kobo reader, make sure you're checking it out on this site, and just the specific Kobo link. So there's a bunch of different ways you can manage it, and I guess kind of just switch them around and see which one's working the best. And sometimes that could mean switching them around, monthly, just to see, because what worked last month might not work this month. So it's just tweaking and playing around with what works.
Yeah, that's great advice. Definitely linking to Kobo. That is sometimes something that can be overlooked, is to linking to where all your books are available. And then one sort of piece of advice that I would have as well is you can just like drop in hints.
Right.
To target
secrets.
to target Canada because that is our biggest market and where you'll get the most return on your investment for any ads that you're having. So I would say
Absolutely.
check those out. And then also just, ask the team. There's a lot of resources. Like there's a really good Wide for the Win group on Facebook where they have a load of resources around like, what works and what doesn't work in terms of marketing to like all the different readers. Yeah.
Absolutely. Erin is amazing. So definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Rashid has a question about rapid release. So I'll come back to the specific question in a little while. But I wanted to talk about rapid release because to me, this sort of, it can lead me to think about authors that are pushing out a book a month. The
Yep.
authors that we just don't understand how they can write that quickly, but they can.
Yeah. They
But
have
this
a
isn't
formula, guys. A formula to make sure it happens.
exactly. Oh, that's a hint. That's a secret.
That is a big hint.
But that's not necessarily how you're interpreting rapid release. Like I like that you still call it rapid release because it really is. Like,
Oh yeah.
So can you like talk about like how you interpret that and what your plans are?
Sure. Well, for me, rapid release is really just the delivery system of how you're publishing. So it doesn't have to be, that you're rapidly writing it and publishing it, side by side simultaneously. It can literally be like you're getting all of your books ready to go, and then you release them a month apart. Or it could be that you are publishing a book a quarter. And so in my program, Rapid Release Roadmap, I'm actually teaching them to think prolifically so that they are increasing their backlist quickly. I mean, 4 books a year is still pretty incredible, but it's also doable for people who are even working a full-time job or part-time job, or if they're a stay-at-home mom. I know how crazy that gets, trust me. And so 4 books a year is what I focus on, just to make sure that they're able to keep moving forward. And we typically focus on a series because when you're trying to use a formula or trying to get your books out quickly, having a series is very important. Plus, it also is very beneficial to the readers who are following you. If they like and consume books quickly, well, a series just makes sense because then they've invested time in that character and can move forward. But when it comes to rapid releasing itself, there's different ways to be able to do it. Like I said, and if you're publishing it at the end of it, if rapid releasing is really calling to you and it's something you want to do, you could release your books 2 weeks apart. You could release them 4 weeks apart. You could release them 6 weeks apart. You could release them all at once. I call that not the never ending one. It's the Netflix style drop where you're dropping all of the books at the same time. So they literally can all read them at the same time. It really just depends on what your motivation is, what your intentions are. Are you trying to hit the dreaded Amazon bestseller lists all at the same time? Whatever it is that your actual goal is how you determine how you're going to rapid release those books. For me, I want to have a little more breathing room in my life. So I liked the once a quarter rapid release method so that it's not, crazy. And I've done it always. I've really tried all the different variations, and I just don't like feeling crazy and stressed out. So
Do you think that it gives you a little bit more room to focus on the marketing as well? Like, because
Oh, for sure.
like the writing is ultimately always going to be like we talked about, craft comes first and that's going to be the main point. But I do wonder sometimes if the marketing gets a little bit put on the back burner when there is so many books. I mean, unless
Yeah.
you're kind of outsourcing your marketing as well, like then there's that. But
Right. Yeah. If you're making enough money on it, I think you definitely can outsource, or you can do the thing where you're having a PA handle all of those details for you, which really does help. But if your PA is not great at advertising or marketing and you need to hire someone else out, then you have to have the money coming in. And so if you're new and you're just starting rapid releasing, it's something that I think you really need to consider when it comes to the marketing side of it, because it can go, especially when you're in the middle of that series. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm great at that first book and trying to make sure that first book is marketed great, the launch goes great. But by the time I hit, the third book launch, my brain is like, I don't even know what's happened anymore, because it was like just the last book's launch last month. So it then becomes that, how do I create a sustainable marketing plan for this situation as well? Like, how do I come back around to make sure that this series is being focused on, and then it pulls you away from the writing side of it too, because now you're in your marketing mindset, which is totally different.
Mm-hmm. So would you focus on one series per year, or like with those 4 books, like would you like, what do you do? Do you have multiple on the go at once?
Do as I say, not as I do. So for me, I do try to focus on just the one series, because then my brain's in it and I'm going forward. But there are times when another story idea will come up, and now all of a sudden I've got two different story ideas running simultaneously. So like right now, I'm in the middle of a series. I've been working on it. It's fine. It's doing its thing and it's going forward according to plan. But then Kindle Vella came up and Radish is out, and there's different things to try. And so I'm trying a serialization with a pen name, and so I got a different story going on the side, and then I've got Author Revolution, and so I've got nonfiction books that I'm also trying to think of. So I'm very disjointed at times when it comes to what I'm writing. So I've got like this round robin thing where I'm constantly trying to cycle between all of them to make sure I'm being all things. But if you really want to maximize your brain space and be able to write quickly and get those books out quickly, I would stick with the one series.
Right. And I
Yeah.
guess as well, like even just thinking about writing in a series is going to give you an extra book, because we always advise people that Kobo readers really enjoy box sets. And it
Yes.
can be like not even just a bargain. It's more of like the means of having them all in one place. And then
Yep.
we have like lots of promotions based around it. So that sort of can take the stress off of a series a little bit, you know, because you could just spend your
Oh,
time
yeah.
like being like, okay, I'm just going to market the box set of this series that I did last year, or, you know.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and you can do multiple box sets too, depending on how many books you've got in there. I mean, there are some where if it makes more sense to break it up, you could do box sets with just two books. So you could have duologies. I mean, it just like the sky's really the limits when it comes
Mhm.
to a series. You can do so many different things, and then you can do the same thing with the audiobooks. You can have an audiobook box set technically.
Yeah.
I, yeah, there's so many cool things about it.
Yeah, and I love that we do see larger box sets on Kobo quite a lot, especially with the ebooks, because we don't have a higher pricing limit. So you're still earning 70% on those sales. So from time
Right.
to time, there'll be like a $50 box set that's hitting our top list. And we're just like, wow,
Oh,
this is
like how did that
amazing.
happen?
Yeah, yeah. But it's great
That's
to know that, you
crazy.
know, the author is really earning the bulk of that, you know.
Oh, for sure. Well, and that's an incredible motivator for authors to be able to continue writing too. Because if you've got 10 books and you can put it up for a box set for $50 and people are buying it, why not? You
Yeah.
know, that's a great.
And we also find it really popular in our subscription platforms. So on Kobo Plus, which is Kobo's subscription platform in Canada. So we've just come over a year, and box sets are definitely more popular. Not more popular,
Right.
definitely quite popular. Because obviously, you know, the reader's getting a bargain, but you're getting paid out per minute. So the longer the book, the better for you.
Right.
Yeah, so it can
Right.
be a great way to reach a new audience. So I just wanted to mention that. And then just as you've mentioned, I just sort of like just want to pick your brain now, and like the serialization. How are you finding it on like Kindle Vella and Radish and things like that? Is it trickier because it's much shorter fiction?
It's trickier only in the fact that because it's kind of a side project for me, it's not one that I haven't invested a whole lot of time other than I just want to see how it works. Is kind of how I went into it. So
Mhm.
I'm putting out a chapter a week, and that's all I'm devoting to it because I've got other books that are a little more priority, I guess. But I like aspects of it. I like the seeing how people are enjoying it and the interaction of it. That part's really cool. Um, but I can't say it's all that different from really anything else, other than you can get that immediate feedback from a reader, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So
that is nice. That is nice. But I was listening to your chat with Orna Ross, and we were like recently on your podcast where you're talking about this, where a lot of people are getting that through Patreon or even like newsletters as well.
yeah,
Getting that kind of direct reader interaction, and yeah, I think that's something that's uh, not potentially unique with an indie author, but I think it's easier. Like your contact information is in the world in a lot of more of an accessible way than some of the kind of bigger like old time all
yeah, like
best
Stephen
selling
King. Good
authors.
luck finding
Exactly.
Stephen King.
Yeah. You could try like
Right,
Stephen at stephenking.com. Like it's just like just
right.
trying
Just
all of
throw
them.
a few things out there, see if that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
I do
Yeah.
that sometimes when I just reply to people's Instagram and I'm just like, they're not gonna see this. This is
Like, I
but I
wish they
like
would. I
when
hope they
people
will.
do. It just makes you feel really special when somebody actually takes the time to like get back to you. You're like, oh.
I agree. And as indie authors, I think we kind of forget too how connected the readers want to be to the author. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
kind of interesting to me because we are always complaining about how writing is such a solitary thing, and it's it's so hard to like continue forward and know that you're doing a good job. But you know, you have that ability at any time to nurture and cultivate this. readership that can interact with you. Have a Facebook group if you want, or chat with them more frequently on your Instagram page, whatever the case might be. There's so many different ways to be able to do it. Patreon or whatever, there's so many different ways to interact with the readers and let them get to know you.
No, I love that. There was a marketing question here that I did not catch, so I will go over it now. So apologies for missing that earlier. But just are libraries and brick and mortar stores part of your marketing push, or do you direct consumers through to online retailers? So just curious about what you do yourself, Carissa.
A little bit of both. I can't say I've pushed the library aspect as much as I probably should, but I do a lot of stuff with my local library where I've taught in person, indie authorship and how to do certain aspects of things. In fact, that's actually where Author Revolution as an online academy kind of came a thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was teaching in person and I had a number of students who missed some classes. Of course, we did it right over winter, which probably was not the best idea here in Minnesota. So there were a few students who would miss because it was too cold, their cars didn't start, or was too much snow or whatever. And so they wanted to get back to it. And so I thought, well, I'll just create a digital version of it so that you guys can go over the material again. And from that point forward, it was like, well, I guess I could do this for other people. You know what I mean? So that was back in 2017, and it's just kind of grown since then.
Nice. We love libraries here at Kobo. All of our Kobo devices have access to Overdrive, so you can sort of log in and access library books if you need. And then on Kobo Writing Life side, you can easily distribute to libraries just by adding the library price and click and save and going forward. But one thing that I'd advise any author that is selling to a library is to just really let your readers know, the same way that we were just kind of talking about how, let your readers know that your books are on Kobo or what all of the retailers they are. The libraries is really a key one because a lot of people don't realize that they can just request books and librarians may buy them, especially knowing if you're a local author or, you're doing these sort of events that are in the libraries. Overdrive actually shared with us that last year, like with our sales through Overdrive, it was 25% of them were demand driven. So that's like, it was a lot higher than I thought. There's, a quarter of all of our sales came from people being like, hey, I want this book by this author.
Right.
So yeah, I find that really encouraging.
For sure. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Especially for those people who think that they can only earn, by being in Kindle Unlimited or something, for example, they can actually earn, other ways. And then it's still free to everyone. It doesn't have to just be free to someone who's on a subscription necessarily. It can be free to go read it at your library or using a library device.
Yeah. It's kind of win-win.
For sure. Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, have you been back? I don't know if your libraries are open, but do you do still events in the library, or is it just kind of shifted to your own kind of website?
It's a little bit of both. I haven't done anything obviously since 2020 kind of hit because it's been a little bit crazy. And for a long time, our library wasn't even open.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't a whole lot of capability to do that. But now they're just now starting to open back up. And so it's something that I will definitely be doing more of. Maybe even for my author side, but it's usually been more towards the author revolution and trying to help other authors in our area learn how to indie publish and write in general. So
yeah, I love that. So we talked about Author Revolution, and I've mentioned your podcast a few times, so you guys should check it out if you haven't already. But I really like the musings. Just when it's you talking, I like really enjoy them as well. I laughed out loud when you said your favorite band was the Bare Naked Ladies. Canada's finest.
Right? They cracked me up so much when I was younger. They're just great. And it was, again, it goes back to that ironic humor. I just love the ironic humor in life. It's just, for whatever reason, just tickles me.
Yeah.
I saw them in person in Minnesota too. Sorry.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, they're still going strong. I think they played something here last year, I think, but yeah.
Oh, too funny. Yeah, it was way back probably early 2000s when they came here, and Stephen was still a part of the band at that time.
I like your dedication. You're just a huge fan. That's awesome.
I just love that they're like bare naked ladies, but they're actually like a bunch of dudes. None of which were naked, at least not most of the time.
Nice. So we've touched on mindset a little bit, but I wanted to and that being an independent author is revolutionary. But how do you think that how does an author get to the spot where they really believe I am a revolutionary, Sorry if you can hear some sirens. There's some noise outside my window, but
all good.
But But yeah, and then just like how can an author get there? And I know that imposter syndrome is just such a thing that we all sort of deal with, but especially with authors, when you're putting like your creative work out to the world, like what would your advice be to sort of shift away from that and really just kind of think of themselves in a revolutionary sense?
Right. Well, the first thing I would say is author imposter syndrome is very real, but I wrote a book on it because of that. So, Right Frame of Mind is out
Excellent.
there. And it used to be called Author Imposter, but it's all about getting over your imposter syndrome. And there's actually 5 different imposter syndromes and the types that are out there. So once you can identify, how you think or what it is that you default to, I guess, you're able to look at it with a like lens of clarity so that you can shift away from it a little bit because it all stems from your thoughts. Your thoughts create your beliefs. And so you have to change your thoughts or tweak your thoughts a little bit in order to create a different belief structure. But in order to change your thoughts, sometimes you have to be presented with a thought that is in direct disagreement to the one that you've been telling yourself over and over again. But it has to make sense. And so a lot of the times it's about understanding limiting beliefs, understanding why we limit ourselves, how we limit ourselves, what those limiting thoughts look like, so that when you think it, you can in that present moment go, you know what, that is actually not helping me to get to where it is I want to go. I need to shift away from that. And usually, like imposter syndrome, ironically enough, it also, we're creative people, but we're probably very high achievers, and most of us are who have that struggle with imposter syndrome. People who are not high achievers, they really don't have that thought process. Like they're just like, whatever, it'll do what it does, you know. You know what I mean? But it's for those of us who really want our thing to succeed, or we want our creative endeavors to do well, or we want to be seen for who we are, that all that stems from being more on that high achiever end. And we kind of hold ourselves back because we're trying to keep ourselves safe. So once you understand that, you're a high achiever probably, and that you're just trying to keep yourself safe, but you keep yourself safe by holding yourself back, you can start to unlock some of that stuff and push through even with the fear. So
Yeah, I really like that equating it to being like a high achiever, or even like authors are probably real perfectionists as well, you
oh yes,
know.
that is one of the archetypes. Actually, one of the imposter
Oh yeah,
archetypes is perfectionist. Yep.
I know, because I never equate. I think I have a mind of what I think a perfectionist is in my head, and like that's
We
not
all
really what it
do.
is. It's just that you like things in a particular way. Like that's
Hmm.
you are trying to achieve more things. So yeah, I think that's an interesting way to just be a little bit reflective and not
Yeah.
get yourself caught up in like a comparison void.
For sure. Well, and even in your own mind, I mean, because we all have, like you said, our perceptions of perfection is different for each author. So what I might consider to be perfection as a double Virgo might be different than what my husband, who is a Pisces, has. You know what I mean? Everybody's idea of perfectionism is a little bit different, and it can hinder us in different ways. And so it really just comes down to understanding, how we limit ourselves through perfectionism. Why are we crutching on that sort of situation in order to not do the thing that we know we're supposed to be doing, the thing that we're called to do, the thing that we want to do but are scared to death to do? We just need to understand how to break through that barrier and move forward into the thing that we want anyway.
No, I love that. I love that. I want to check your book out to dive into that myself, because a lot of this stuff is like really specific to authors, but I think it's helpful for sort of anyone as well.
I for sure. Especially if you're a creative. I think when you're a creative, there's just so much of that imposter syndrome that goes on because we think, we look at some of these people who have been just absolutely incredible at their craft, and then we compare ourselves and the way that we do our craft, or the way that we do our art next to them, and it's not necessarily the same. And so somehow that must be less than, and it's not. It's just we're all coming from a different place, and we have to embrace that.
Nice. You'll be happy to know there's also a double Virgo in the chat. Bryn also, she gets the
High five. Yes.
perfectionism problem.
Yes. I love that she got the understanding that it's a double Virgo and what that means. I love it. Scorpio rising too, just saying. Sorry, guys.
Oh wow. So you have a book written about that, and then another book that you wrote that sort of spoke to me is about how authors are sort of like balancing their work throughout kind of like a busy day. Basically, how can you write within your schedule? And I'm looking at the calendar. I can't believe it's October this week. NaNoWriMo is coming up, which we do every year. I'm already making excuses for myself to not complete it.
What?
I know.
You can't do that already. What are you talking about?
I know. So what can I do? How can I like get my hour or two of writing every day into my November? What would your advice for me be?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things. The first one would be to join my Plan Your Series challenge that's going to be coming up the last week of October. So
Ooh.
if you want to write in a series, maybe join that. It's going to be, let's see if I can remember this right, authorrevolution.org/plan your series is going to be where it's housed at.
Cool. I'll get Laura to drop that in the chat if she can, the Plan Your Series.
There you go. Right now, if you go there today, I mean, it gives you the option to purchase the last Plan Your Series challenge that we did in August, but we're going to be doing a live version of it in October. So that'll be replaced. It's going to be moving to a different URL. And so if you want to purchase the last time, you can definitely do that. Or if you want to join this time, you can join in October, where we'll be live and we'll be doing it together and kind of going through that whole thing. So it'll be planning your series out. If you want to be able to start with NaNoWriMo, that's a perfect time to start. Or if you just want to be planning it out so that you can start January 1st, whatever. But the idea is that you plan it out during that week. And I know for myself, then we go into our writing sprint. Whenever we do the challenge, we go straight into a 6-week writing sprint. And it just kind of happens to coincide. It was almost like I thought about that. Almost happens just to coincide with NaNoWriMo, and then we go forward through it. But yeah, then with NaNoWriMo and finding the time, it really comes down to, at least for me, figuring out when I am most creative and when I am most motivated to write. So if you are not a morning person, don't try to write in the morning. You're not going to do it. If you're a busy person and you've got a ton of kids in the evening, probably not best time either. Maybe try your lunch break, or maybe try slipping in 15-minute segments and just run sprints throughout your day whenever you've got 15 minutes of pause time.
Do you think that can be helpful, just having a 15 minutes every little while in a day? Yeah.
I can write 500 words in 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So why not? I mean, as you get better, it's like, especially if you leave yourself off mid-sentence. So if you know that your time's up and you have to move on to something else, pause it mid-sentence. So because your brain automatically wants to understand or finish that sentence. And so it helps your brain go back into that flow of where you were at during that time frame. So stop there, come back and do another 15-minute sprint or half an hour sprint, whatever the sprint size might be for you. It doesn't have to all be in one big chunk. I think a lot of authors think, oh gosh, I have to spend my entire afternoon writing and I don't have that time. Yeah. Do 15 minutes, do a half an hour. One word is better than no words, but at least do some writing. And 1,667 words, if you're doing NaNoWriMo as it stands, it's really not that terrible. I mean, if you could write 500 words in 15 minutes, that could be like in an hour and a half, you're done with your 1,600 words. You know what I mean? So don't let the number play a mind game with you. Instead, flip it over that this is easy. This is totally easy. I can do this. I can manage this, no problem. Because you will, and it gets easier the more you do it.
Nice. No, that's wonderful advice. I hope people found that helpful, but I certainly did myself. I'm like, maybe I can just like book little 15-minute chunks in my calendar during November. That'll be good.
There's a great app that's out there, and we use it for Author Revolution and for people who join then Rapid Release Roadmap. But you can join it just anywhere. It's called Oh Write. So look for it. It's a writing sprint online app. You join it. You can join other writing sprints that are going on around the world. Author Revolution has its own, so you can go into like little rooms and sprint with whoever's sprinting in that room at that particular moment. And it's so much fun because you can chat with them, meet new people. It's really a neat place to organize and hang out.
Nice. We actually used it last year for what we call Kobo Writing. We used to do once a week. Once a week we just have internal people all writing together, and it was really fun to see like everyone else. I mean, I also found it really fun but a little bit demoralizing to see how much people were writing, but
compare yourself. What are you doing?
I know I'm in the wrong mindset already, but yeah, no, I really like the idea of the short sprints, and there's a comment as well just saying that the short sprints are awesome, so they're so much fun,
and they keep you focused because I mean, remember Parkinson's law, your work expands to fit the time allotted for it. So if you try to say, oh, I've got all afternoon to write, it's going to take you all afternoon to write. Or if you say, I only have an hour to do this whole chapter, you're probably going to get darn close to finishing that chapter because you're tricking your mind into doing the thing that you want it to do. I mean, really, honestly, it's all about a mind game. I mean, whether you're working out or whether you're writing books, as long as your mind says you can do it, you can handle it.
Yeah, and it's probably actually leads to better writing because you're not necessarily having these long sprawling sentences. You're really trying to get to the point.
Yep.
And yeah, I can see that as kind of a better, a good way to like hone your descriptors and things like that.
And it allows you kind of to sink into the flow of the writing and the scene itself. Being present with the scene is really crucial. And if you're trying to, I don't know if fluff up the sentence is really the thing, but kind of where you're trying to make the sentence perfect, because I know a lot of authors do that. I was the president of the board for a local nonprofit here in the Lakes area for the past 3 years, and I saw it over and over again. All these authors who want to spend time, making sure all of their sentences are perfect and spot on, and sometimes it misses the point of just sometimes the first way you wrote it is actually better. It's received better because it's coming from that place within you that is more authentic. And then as soon as you start tweaking it and fizzling with it and doing what you think is making it perfect, it's actually taking away some of its magic.
Yeah, as Distinct authors just said here, that it also prevents you from editing as you go, which is a word
Yes.
killer.
Yes.
And yeah, for sure, you shouldn't be doing that. That's why you're going to have somebody edit, or you'll edit it yourself later, you know?
I have a friend who refuses, like she will not edit anything at all unless she's wearing her editor's cap. So if the cap is not on her head, she just reminds herself that she can't she's here to write. She's not here to
Like
edit.
a physical hat?
Like a physical hat, yeah. And
I
so
love that.
she's got her editor's cap on, and unless she's got that cap on, she cannot edit.
I think
So
that's
maybe
good
you need a
because
trick like that.
yeah, you can't start thinking about like grammar and things like that when you're really in a story. Like that's especially with NaNoWriMo and quick sprints like this, because it really is just getting some of the creativity out and then you clean it up later.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's always time, even if you were to publish it and decide later on that you wanted to clean it up and change it or add to it or whatever. As indie authors, we can do that. We are the masters of our careers and our books and everything that we're doing, and then we can make those tweaks. We can make those changes at any point. So you don't have to ever feel stuck that just because you published it, it has to stay that way forever. But I will give you some advice that, usually when you're done with the book, just let it be there and keep moving forward. You get better, so there will always be a reason to go back and tweak something, trust me.
That's true. That's true. Although we do have there was a big romance author that told us once that she rereads her books pretty often to try and tweak the technology as it changes. And I appreciate the dedication to that. I like don't know if it's like fully necessary, but because I think readers just sort of go with it, but it's a good way to breathe new life into a book to make sure you're not talking about voicemails. I mean, I guess we still get voicemails, but
I'm like
answering machines. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I'm more of a that must be a romance, like a contemporary thing more so, because I'm like more science fiction and then fantasy. So I'm like, I don't know that I would have to do that.
No, your stuff is all futuristic anyway, right?
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah.
Or like different alternate version of reality. So it's like, whatever.
Yeah. But that sort of leads into what I wanted to chat about as well. I know we're kind of running low on time, but I'll still jump in. But yeah, can you talk to me about genre bending a little bit and like?
You bet.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it so much. And it again goes back to Joss Whedon. I'm sorry, he's just the master of that thing. So for me, I've always liked when you've taken a stereotypical genre and then you've taken another one and you've mashed them together. So a good example would be Firefly, where it's a Western but it's science fiction. So it's just like, what? How can those possibly work? But they do. I like taking that idea of fantasy and adding science fiction elements, or taking a science fiction book and adding fantasy elements. I like time travel in a fantasy book, or you know what I mean? There's different elements, different ways that you can genre bend and bring in something that just makes it a little more unique or gives it a different spin or flavor than people are typically used to. And that's when you get those readers who come back and go, oh my gosh, this was like the craziest book. It was so cool because I've never read anything like it before. And in some ways, yes, I get the whole concept of, you don't want to have a book that's so far out there that people are like, oh my gosh, I've never read a book like that before. But as long as you're hitting the tropes that they're kind of looking for, as long as you're writing in a way that, really manifests through what you described it to be, your book blurb or your advertising or whatever, they're fine. They don't care. Just run with it and bend all you want. It's awesome.
You've just helped Carolyn realize that she's a bender of genres as well.
Nice. Excellent. I love those.
Yeah. Because I mean, once you're sort of like, you mentioned the tropes, right? That those are so universal in storytelling. I really like that aspect of picking those different things. I mean, I immediately went to, when you were saying Wild West sci-fi, was the Wild Wild West, the Will Smith version, which I'm sure is not a most wonderful example.
Yeah, that would give you a little pause, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So what are the genres that you kind of are working on bending right now?
Oh gosh, right now I'm working on, I guess it's mystery and then psychic detective is kind of what it's going for. So it's paranormal women's fiction. She's 2,000 years old, so it goes more that way. But yeah, I like to take like a stereotypical mystery and then add on top this psychic who's in the middle of it all. But I pull in different elements. Sometimes it's science fiction, sometimes it's the gods, sometimes it's paranormal aspects. Like this particular book is pulling in some of the paranormal stuff from the Windhaven Witches series that I did last year. And I don't know, I like just pulling in whatever kind of comes out of that particular series at the time. I mean, I go through and I do my outlines and try to figure out what the goal of the whole story is going to be. But sometimes the characters have a way of just going, oh, we're going to do it this way. So you just never know how it's going to end up bending. But the other one that I'm doing right now too, for the Kindle Vella thing is, I've never been a werewolf person. Like, so I know it's very hot in the paranormal romance thing right now. And my PA Jenny is always trying to get me to write a werewolf series. And I was like, oh, so I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it, but I'm only doing it as a serial and under a pen name. But it's a paranormal women's fiction, women's fantasy fiction version of a PNR, PNR. So she's 40 something, she's divorced, and she gets bit and becomes the alpha in this particular werewolf pack. And so that's what's happening. But she of course has to have a romance with the Omega, because why not? You got to add that in there somewhere.
It would be missing. It would be missing.
Right. Right. So I'm just kind of genre bending the paranormal women's fiction and fantasy with werewolf, because I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen for whatever reason, they like to do more of, I don't know, magic and witches, and the paranormal women's fantasy has done a lot of other things. So I'm like, why not? I'm going to do something different. I like to be different.
Great. Yeah. Are you do you read many genres then as inspiration? Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only one that I'm not a super big romance reader, so I don't read like contemporary romance. But I'll read pretty much anything else. So as long as it's got some sort of fantasy element or science fiction element or new age element, or I mean, I read everything new, whether it's nonfiction or fiction or whatever, I'm probably reading it.
Love that.
I like to spend my morning reading, so I read for the first probably hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh, so that's your creative morning, is you're kind of soaking it in.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a good place to start too. It just gives you that good vibe of knowing what you want to accomplish for the day.
Mm-hmm, for sure. I know, because sometimes I'm always like an evening reader, and then I just never get around to it, because it's just like you fall asleep after like 2 pages. Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah. I would fall asleep. My brain. I'm an early morning person, so if I read in the morning, I enjoy it more.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, well, it's been so nice to have you on here, and we've had so many great comments. There's some people making friends in the comments. Sorry, Carolyn wants to be friends with you as well, Carissa. So you guys
yes, come over, hang out with me. It's all good. You can find me pretty much everywhere. Just come say hi.
Yeah. So where can people learn more about you and check you out?
Sure. Well, you can check me out at carissaandrews.com or authorrevolution.org, depending on what it is that you're looking for. And then if you're just trying to get in touch, I'm pretty much everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even, I guess. All those places. Just depends on where you want to go and where you want to hang out. But I check them all. So
do you do your own TikToks? And have you done, like, tell us about your TikTok?
I do. It's a combination. It's joint effort. I do most of them, but there are some where I've like handed the phone off to my daughter, who's 12 years old, and I've said, here, do something with this. And I've let her run away with it. So if you see anywhere it's like got a fur background and it looks way more put together than just my face or something, yeah, that was her. That was definitely her. Because I just like, I don't have time, but she loves TikTok. It's her thing. So
Nice.
it's fun to see what she comes up with.
Yeah, I think it's good to like be on all socials as an author, but to make sure you have fun with it as well. So it's handy if you have somebody that can take the reins for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice to have them take the reins for a bit, and then you get kind of a, I don't know, inspiration out of it where like, oh, I didn't think of doing it that way. And she's in a different side of TikTok anyway. And so she sees and spots different trends. So again, then we genre bend the trends. So it's like in her TikTok version, so it's not book talk, it's something else. You know, she'll pull something and then we'll just bring it into the book talk realm and see what happens.
Nice. That must be nice having that insights, because I feel like I'm just so far away from that sometimes that it's like we'll be talking about book
Same.
talk and I'm like, is book talk even cool anymore? Like what's
Good. I don't know. I'm so busy with my head in a notebook or a book or
I think it is. I mean, yeah, I have to just jump on it, I think. But yeah, no, that's
For
very
sure.
helpful. Get your kids to do your marketing.
Yes, especially the 12 to like 16-year-old. Well, probably not 16, because they're going to be like, why do I have to do this thing? Are you going to pay me? but definitely the 12, 13, 14-year-olds, because they're going to understand it a little bit more and have more fun with it, I think, because we come at things a little too seriously. Once you get this indie hat on, it's like we're all so serious trying to run this business, and we forget to have fun sometimes. At least I do. I don't know. Double Virgo again.
Oh, well, you've been such a wonderful guest. I really appreciate your time here, and I think this was so good. And I hope people got a lot out of it. I am definitely going to plan your series challenge. I feel like that could be something that'd be very interesting. Carolyn, yes, you can stalk me too. That's fine. It did read a little creepy, but I'm fine with it.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And don't forget, you're going to be on my podcast next month, right?
Yeah, next month. I'll be happy to we'll switch seats on the other side. I know, it's so exciting. But yeah, make sure that you're subscribing to her podcast too, so you can check that out. And yeah, thank you all, and we'll be back soon with another guest. And oh yes, we will drop the link in afterwards. I'll do this after this goes live. But yeah, Carissa, thank you. Is there anything you wanted to say that we didn't mention?
Go forth and start your author revolution.
Love it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye.